Hi, I'm Lizzie Wright, Executive Director for Justice for Our Neighbors here in Austin. I want to welcome everyone to our 2021 virtual gala. Some of you are just getting acquainted with our work tonight as guests with us, and some of you this afternoon have been supporting us and our work since our founding in 2013. Our mission continues to be the same since those first days: to welcome immigrants and refugees into our communities by providing free, high-quality immigration legal services, education, and advocacy. But something has changed recently, and that is our location. We have a new home thanks to the generosity and warmth of the congregation at St. John's United Methodist Church. We are so very grateful for their hospitality and enthusiasm to partner together in this new way. Our new office is literally a home office located in a house. It has been wonderful to welcome clients to meetings and start to live into a new life at home together in this place. Earlier this month, as we were moving in, I had asked St. John Senior Pastor Hillary Marchbanks if she would bless our office house. And so she, Pastor Randy Knighton, who leads outreach ministries here at St. John's, and Reverend Laura Merrill, the superintendent of the Capital District of the Rio, Texas Conference of the United Methodist Church, came together to bless our work. And so as we prepare to share that blessing with you tonight, I want to welcome you to our home and welcome you to the gala.
God, we thank you for the gift of hospitality which we ourselves receive and in turn extend to others. We know that you are the source of every good thing. Light and love come from you. You have created us and you continue to breathe life into us through the power of your Spirit. You have given us so much. And in recognizing the gifts that you have given to us, we now dedicate this space to your service.
We now dedicate this space to the work of building justice on this earth. May each room be used wisely and diligently, that others may find hope and peace. As we dedicate this space, we offer ourselves too. For this brick and mortar are but simple materials. May our hands reach out in service. May our feet walk the difficult path of reconciliation and justice. And may our words be words of peace and comfort.
We pray in thanksgiving for the presence of Austin Region Justice for Our Neighbors in this space. We ask, O God, that you will continue to be honored through their work of empowering immigrants. We pray for each partner and supporter, and in particular today, we pray for those clients who will be served here, those who sojourn among us with courage, seeking hope. Bless them in their journeys and help them find respite and home. Guide and direct the efforts of JFON and lead us all to create positive and enduring change for those in need in this community and beyond. Amen.
Amen.
Another new home we've become familiar with this year is Q2 Stadium, home of Austin FC, the first Major League sports team in the city of Austin. Justice for Our Neighbors was approached with an opportunity to fundraise by staffing a concession stand for the home games in this inaugural season. And we went into this project hopeful to engage volunteers who'd been asking about opportunities to be able to help JFON on the weekends. We hoped also to hit at least $20,000 or about $1,000 a game in funds raised. And then the 38 volunteers who survived TABC and food handler training, as well as a pretty constant line of guests wanting wings and fried pickles, they managed to hit that $20,000 mark in the middle of August. If you showed up for the gala early, you might have seen the Austin FC volunteer names scrolling through, and I want to take a moment to recognize 2 volunteers in particular. The first is a colleague in ministry, Reverend Adam Knapp. Pastor Adam is the senior pastor at Floresville United Methodist Church, and he drove, I think it's 107 miles to volunteer as part of this initiative. It's the longest distance of all of our volunteers, so we want to give Pastor Adam the Extra Mile Volunteer Award, which he earned quite literally. The other volunteer we'd like to recognize tonight is Gloria Mendoza. I've actually known Gloria since middle school, and she showed up at the call for help and has been at 9 games already, about half of the home season. And so figuring out the amounts raised divided by the number of volunteers present at each event, Gloria is responsible for raising over $3,100 just herself. So thank you, Gloria, for your dedication, for your enthusiasm. Thank you, and we're honored this afternoon to be able to give you the Volunteer Impact Award. We've got 2 more events before the end of the home season, and with our volunteers, we win every game. This year included another essential way that volunteers were engaged in life-changing work. At the end of May and then culminating in the second week of June, the whole Justice for Our Neighbors network, over 18 chapters, joined in a campaign to advocate for legislative reform and immigration. The All of Us campaign, as it was called, centered on 3 areas of advocacy: vigils, op-eds, and meetings with legislators. Kendall Antonelli and Sarah McKibben helped organize and lead a meeting with Jack Youngblood of Senator Cornyn's office, and our board president, Clayton Carr, who was in that meeting, also joined in on a phone meeting with Senator Cruz. It's been 35 years since there's been any significant immigration legislation. And it has seemed recently like the comprehensive reform proposed in the Citizenship Act of 2021 will be stalled indefinitely, but it doesn't have to be. I was in a national advocacy meeting this past week, and honestly, I expected things to feel pretty bleak, with Title 42 still being upheld by the current administration as a measure for public health and safety, so-called, but effectively halting asylum at the border all over again, such that no asylum seekers can pass through. The administration has meanwhile announced plans to open up the borders to vaccinated travelers in the first week of November. No concern for health and safety there, but concern about health and safety for asylum seekers crossing the border. Instead of feeling bleak, which it still sounds bleak in some ways as I say it, I still feel like I did coming out of that meeting. I have this sense of privilege, just how privileged we are, and how much we take for granted that we can use our voices. We live in a place where we can use our votes to make change happen. Now, while the Senate parliamentarian, an unelected individual and currently someone who formerly served as a federal prosecutor for immigration and customs enforcement, the parliamentarian has twice ruled that pathways to citizenship do not meet the Byrd Rule and thus cannot be included in the budget reconciliation bill. There is an option, though, besides simply removing citizenship from the bill. The vice president can disregard the parliamentarian with the support of 40 senators and keep citizenship in the reconciliation bill, which then only needs a simple majority to pass. Now, it's believed, though, in all of the circles of advocacy, that the vice president and the Senate won't take that action unless they hear from their constituents, unless they hear from the people. So call the White House, call your senators. We will send you scripts to help with that in the coming days. I was reminded this week when I was traveling and got to see a memorial to Anne Frank and humanitarian rights, that now is the time. Now is always the time to speak out for justice. Even if you think your senators or representatives won't bend to your will, why give them a pass? Why stay silent? They should have to hear their constituents' voices. Now is the time. Now is always the time. Now is always the time to seek justice.
Feeling settled, at peace, comfortable.
I think there's, a level of trust that has to be built up where you feel safe sharing your story and, and you make other people feel safe sharing their stories with you.
It's like when you land on an airplane, you get this feeling of, I'm home. We landed, yay, excitement, it's peaceful. You're home with the familiar, with you don't have to be working so hard, you're not stressed. Even you enjoy the other place, but here is the familiar, the things the things you love, they're used to.
It's about the familiar and a place that environment that and because of that, there comes a feeling of safety, and in that you're able to be more your true self. You're able to be more vulnerable.
When we feel at home, I think all of those walls, all of those facades kind of come down and we can really live our authentic and true selves.
There was this one time when I was walking on Silk Park with my daughter, and I tell this story because it's so amazing. And I saw a Mexican family having a birthday party. It was very colorful, and they had tons of food, and which I love food. And then in the middle, they had a big bowl of ceviche, and I was like, it was shrimp ceviche, and it was, that looks so yummy. And I said it out loud. And then this woman heard me, and she turns to me and said, would you like some? And I said, oh, no, yeah, come on over. She made room to me and for me, and we sat and we had ceviche, with strangers. With strangers, we got to know each other over a meal, and it was fantastic. And I just always tell the story because that openness of that hospitality, right? I wasn't invited to a party. And here I was, a stranger in the party, crashing the party. She invited me to a party. That we need to have that openness to welcome other people.
I felt at home with a neighbor who was Liberian and his wife who was Russian, who lived behind our house in McAllen, and felt at home with them because we shared in being different from the people around us. We had something in common in that we didn't have something in common with everyone else. And that was an experience I wasn't expecting to have, but it was really beautiful.
I guess it was 1981. I moved from St. Paul, Minnesota to San Antonio. And, I was young and foolish, and I was going to school down there, and I had no idea what I was getting into. It was, talk about culture shock, very different culture. I had a really hard time. I hated it. When I first moved to San Antonio, I did not like San Antonio. Forgive me, anybody watching from San Antonio, because I love San Antonio now after living there for many, many years. But
I have been far from home and felt like an outsider in a variety of ways. From traveling to Japan, where I didn't speak the language, I didn't understand the culture fully, to living my life in a heteronormative society. Feeling like an outsider is really vulnerable. It can make you feel like you're in constant fear that if something happens, will anyone come help me? Or will this outsider be ignored or abandoned?
To me, the definition of home is tricky because I'm an immigrant here. Originally, I moved from Guatemala. So for a while, I thought that home was Guatemala. I would land in Guatemala, and when the plane would land, I would say, I would get this feeling of, I'm here, I'm home, right? And that was for the early years. And then afterwards, things started to change, because when the plane landed in the U.S., I was like, I'm home. what I mentioned that we should go beyond welcoming is because I've been welcome at places where I don't feel welcome, right? But I've been said, oh, glad you're here, welcome, blah blah blah. But I haven't been welcome. When I've been welcome is when I feel included, when I feel taken care of, when I feel like people want to get to know me. That's when I feel welcome. When people want to get to know me and I feel included.
Noticing is an act of compassion, and then that honors the dignity and of the other. And so, it really is the first bit of compassion to notice those around you, and especially when it's a place where you feel home. To be that one that has compassion on those who this is not yet home for them. And then of course the gift you have to share of how this could become home, how they are welcome, how they in the highest sense of a community that we feel called to welcome others.
As a United Methodist, it's important to me that we talk about justice for our neighbors as a hospitality ministry of the church. What that means to me is that we aren't just providing legal defense for people and legal pathways for citizenship, although that's obviously really important for what we're doing. But it means more than that. It means that we are seeking to help people feel at home with us. And I think we do that, first of all, by acting as though they are us, not a them, not an other, but that there is only us.
I believe that finding a sense of home is really vital. It's really important for our daily lives.
Well, again, I think the most important thing is to listen to each other's stories, right? Just allow people space to tell their stories, and just to be with people in tough times. Be by their sides. Do what you need to do to help them along. But just mostly walk through life with them.
Hola, les habla el Mariachi Imperial de Houston, Texas. We want to send a special shout out to Justice for Our Neighbors. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and thank you so much for everybody that has contributed in many ways. So this is a special medley for you guys. Saludos desde Houston, Texas, Mariachi Imperial de América, especially for you guys, Justice for Our Neighbors. Hey guys.
cuando así me dijiste a mí, por eso iba esperando.
The perfect opportunity presented itself at the beginning of the year with a grant from the Luz Foundation. It was a grant about immigration, and I thought this is the perfect time to do a collaboration between Undocumented Stories and Justice for Our Neighbors. So we applied for this grant, and in the spring we knew that we had gotten the grant.
Yeah, and it's been a whirlwind of work since then, but really wonderful. It really is the perfect collaboration because it's centering story, which is what Undocumented Stories does. And in educational presentations that I am a part of, it just never quite feels right for me to be talking about immigrants, sharing on their behalf, telling someone else's story when really immigrants have their own voice.
And this is the great thing about this project, right? We give immigrants a platform so that they can share the stories in their own words.
Yeah. So not only do we have that in video format, we are also putting together a book. There are 12 storytellers. There's an introduction from Dr. Jesus, or Jesse Esparza from Texas Southern University. He gives what is one of the most incredibly informative and yet succinct summaries of immigration in the United States, the history of it. And then we have our storytellers, and then we give some information that ties that to facts about immigration in the United States today. So it's not just stories, it's not anecdotal, and it's not just facts that are dry. They go together, they support each other, and
that's what we call the truth in our stories.
Yeah, the truth in our stories. So we're excited to share with you today.
My name is Adrian Zamora, and this is my story. I remember asking my world studies teacher if it was even worth applying to college, knowing I was not going to qualify for FAFSA, knowing that I did not qualify for a majority of the scholarships out there, knowing that my parents would not be able to afford it, and most importantly, knowing that I was undocumented. It was the first time I told any adult at my high school about my reality, and I felt very vulnerable. My thoughts were racing at the anticipation of her response. Why did I ask her that? Will she see me differently now? How will this affect our relationship? Will she tell the principal? And will I get in trouble? She closed the door to her classroom during her study hours to discuss my situation and empathized with my reality. I had no idea about your past, and I appreciate your trust in me. I know there's a lot of precautions that you have to take and that you will continue to take as you progress in life, but I know that you are a curious kid, you excel in groups, you lead the class discussions, and those qualities will morph into your key strengths one day. It will be difficult. Don't limit your dreams in life by the cards you were dealt with from the start. From then on, I started spotting opportunities instead of barriers. It was a mental change that stuck with me since then. My parents brought me to the United States from Durango, Mexico at the age of 4. They took great care of me as best as they could, always putting my education above everything else. I was put into a bilingual school at first so I could adjust to English, but as soon as my mom saw that I was not picking it up fast enough, she threw me into the deep end and transferred me to a mostly white elementary school called Briker Woods. I learned English within the first 6 months, and before I knew it, I was translating everything for my parents, from their taxes to their dentist appointments, teacher evaluations, although I did take the liberty from refraining a couple of things on that. One of my earliest memories was finding out that my mother needed surgery on her ear due to a horrible treatment she got back in the rural town we were from. She had an ear infection as a girl that was treated with a water syringe, and it was poorly done with more pressure than the human eardrums could handle, and she had lost most of her hearing on her left ear since then. I remember speaking with the financial operator in regards to her insurance. No insurance, I said. As undocumented immigrants, we front the full cost for any medical treatment we get since we do not qualify for insurance, even though most of us can afford it. My mother needed this operation done decades ago, but after receiving the quote for the total bill, she didn't want to burden the family any longer and decided not to go through with it. Shortly after, my brother was born here in Austin, Texas. I was the happiest brother alive, at least just for that day. Later, I found that my mother, again, went out of her way to have my brother without any anesthetics to lessen the burden of the hospital bill for my father. It was very obvious from a young age about the disparities that were plaguing the undocumented community. As my family assimilated to the United States, my dad began teaching my mom how to drive. They grew up in different times, and my grandfather never taught his daughters how to drive. I remember her telling me that she was pulled from middle school to fulfill her duties at home. It was a different time for sure, but my mom was eager to learn, and I remember for 4 years straight, she would only take Lamar to our school because she was afraid of the highway. When she got her license, I was so happy and proud of her. She now had a valid ID and did not have to drive in fear any longer. That only lasted for a decade or so, because around 10 years ago, a new law passed stating that anyone without a social security number could not receive a license. It would change the lives of hundreds of thousands of people who would never get the opportunity to learn how to drive safely like my parents did. And the law would immediately label them as criminal subjects to a citation at best or deportation at worst. Assimilating to the United States would become that much harder, and every time they sat behind the wheel, they would take on a terrible risk because they would never know if the next time they went grocery shopping would be the last time that they would see their children. This was another way of going around the problem instead of facing the real issue. It was more about instilling fear into people than addressing the issue and coming to a resolution. I remember comparing my upbringing here in the United States to carrying a deadly secret in an action movie. A secret so lethal that if discovered, everything my parents and I had worked towards in order to have a normal life would vanish in an instant. My fear was real and had real repercussions in my life. I would not say a word to my closest friends about my status because I did not want them to think any differently of me. And I also did not want to put my family in a risky situation that could be avoided by acting like I was normal. By keeping all the secrets at all costs, and to this very day, there are many just like me, carrying and hiding this secret of their existence in a wrong place. Here's an example. I was in the 7th grade and I thought I had made an awesome friend who really related to me. We had similar hobbies and a lot of the same classes, and he was just one of the few friends that I told about my status during my class. I blindly put my trust in him to keep it to himself, but as soon as the words came out of my mouth, he shouted to the whole class, "Hey everyone, Adrian is an illegal immigrant." I laughed and tried to play it off as best as I could, but I was embarrassed and felt targeted. I knew not to say a word after that, and so I went back into hiding and closed the door on opening up to anyone else, at least for that point in my life. Or take the 2nd grade for another example. Everyone knows that one kid who is a troublemaker, right? I don't know for what reason or what problem Nick had that day, but he convinced me to play the game where you open up your hand and you try and go between all your fingers with your pencil really fast. It sounded fun. He went first, and when I opened my hand, he stabbed me with his pencil. I still have the mark to this day, and the only other memory I have of that kid is when I was jumping rope in PE class, and he walked right up to me and called me a stupid Mexican. I don't think those two events were coincidence or isolated events. I identified as American but knew that I had no status. I knew the United States' short but rich history better than Mexico's, and at this point I spoke English better than my native tongue. I needed to figure out a way to pay for college with minimal assistance from my parents. Luckily, I had amazing counselors and teachers that guided me through every step of the way. At the end of the day, I decided to go to Austin Community College because of financial limitations I had at the time. I had 2 jobs while I was at Austin Community College, so I could save up to transfer to a 4-year university. I got my associate's degree and was off to Texas Tech University on an amazing transfer scholarship that paid for all of my tuition. In the middle of my junior year at Texas Tech, I received a call telling me that my grandmother had passed away. My mother moved here when she was 27 and did not see her for another decade, at which point my grandmother visited once a year on a tourist visa for the next decade or so. But can you imagine only seeing your mother once a year for the rest of your life after your mid-20s? It was heartbreaking. I knew I wouldn't be able to go to her funeral, which took a toll on me. But I can't even begin to fathom what my mother was going through. She had packed her bags the next day and was ready to leave the United States and never come back. But she ended up staying because she knew that my grandmother would want her to fulfill her duties to her children, as any mother would do. 5 years later, and my mother has still not been able to go and visit her mother at the cemetery to pay her respects. This is just one example of what mothers and fathers sacrifice to their children when they cross the border. And just like that, after almost being done with college, after doing an internship and having a job offer, I was painfully reminded of my barriers. I was okay with having multiple jobs to pay for college, with not being able to study abroad while I was in college. I was okay with a lot of things, but I never imagined that my mother would have to endure something like that just so she could watch me grow up to be the man I am today. As we go through life, our brains tend to filter out experiences, memories, or issues that really don't apply to our everyday lives or have a significant impacts in our immediate social bubbles. It's just a natural human tendency that we have that programs us into our familiar daily cycles. This is why it's hard to be consistent with goals, because we are constantly bombarded with information like social media, studying for exams, making plans with friends, etc. Our brain is always trying to figure out what the next thing is, and that cycle of planning competes with looking meaningfully and constructively towards the future. It's one of the reasons big problems that require years to solve often get ignored. Yet that kind of critical, strategic, future-oriented thinking is a distinction of human consciousness. Think of the plastic in the ocean, for example. We know it's there, we feel guilty about it, possibly a little bit more during Shark Week or when we visit a nasty beach. But then when we're back in our homes and we get back into our social bubbles, and the problem of plastic disappears from our thoughts. I implore you to not let this happen with immigration and the steps that need to be taken to enable a safer and more educated United States. We all know that it's an ongoing issue, but it might not affect your everyday lives, but it does affect my everyday life and 700,000 other dreamers that are a subset of the 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. We need each other as we are already intertwined economically, socially, politically, and the next person you meet in college or at a fundraising event could be someone who has been hiding for most of their lives. Be the reason that they can trust you. Educate your peers about the misconceptions about us and what we face. Do your research on plausible solutions and urge your local, state, and federal lawmakers to vote on which ones you think are best. You are our voices because we don't have one on paper, but you're hearing me now, and I am living proof that someone who didn't speak a lick of English when brought here overcame many of the issues that still need to be tackled nationally. The college debt crisis, I'm debt-free and it can be done. Unemployment after college, I was hired into one of the best finance development programs in the world after college. And even so, my barriers are still not over. When my company's international conference in Singapore was announced, I had the trust and the courage to tell my manager that I could not go because I was a dreamer. Thankfully, my high school teacher wasn't the last person in my life who was open to learning about my past. Throughout college, my career, and even now, I am thankful to share my journey with you.
My name is Sandra Garcia, and this is my story. Sometimes when I go on a car ride and I hear a song, an old song from Juan Gabriel or somebody like that on the radio, it makes me so sad because I think of my little sister Elsa when she was young. She was 7 or 8 years old, and she would sing to us. We would be working in the fields, and she also kind of wanted to make some money. Elsa would sing to us, and she would charge us 25 cents a song. She would walk behind us, behind the person that requested the song, and she would sing her heart out. She still sings. She loves to sing. She would sit in the field and wait for us when she got tired or her song would be finished. And she would wait for us when we came back. I don't know how she memorized all these songs, but she did, and she knew we loved those songs. Both of my parents, my younger sister Susie and I, were born in Mexico. We were farm workers alongside for 9 years. I think how hard it was to be for my parents to see Elsie and my brother out there in the heat for 10 hours a day. But my dad would always say to us, don't ever be embarrassed of who you are. Tell people all the places that you visited. Tell them you've been to Colorado, Montana, Michigan. Just don't tell them that you were out there working the fields. I guess he thought we would be embarrassed, and maybe other people thought we should be embarrassed, but we weren't. We were very proud of ourselves. It was just hard work that we didn't tell people how hard it was. We worked in Colorado and Montana several years, but mostly spent all our summers in Michigan. We also worked in West Texas, very hot. The schedule was 6 days a week for 10 hours a day. I remember praying for rain, even though my parents didn't like the rain because we didn't get paid. No work, no pay. But it was a little break for us. The moment dark clouds would appear, us kids would start praying quietly. You end up with so many blisters in your hands, and after all, you would just pop them and you would continue working. Very painful. There were no band-aids. We didn't use any of that. We also ended up with major sunburns. 6 days a week were for work in the fields, and Sundays were for church, laundromat, and grocery shopping. Not too much fun, but it kept us from working in the fields. We were children. It was a lot of work, but I don't remember ever complaining. It was just something we had to do to help the family. The money we earned was not for us. It mostly went to fix our house and whatever my parents decided to do with it. I was 9 or 10 years old when I started working, but they listed me as having 13 years old. I was always been a big girl. Being 13 meant you got paid as an adult, but it also meant you had to work as hard as an adult. Of course, my mom and my dad were always next to me, helping me, making sure I didn't stay behind. There were also so many other good things about all those years. We were always together as a family. We talked all day. We shared our thoughts. I have very good parents that only wanted to give us a better living than the life we had in Mexico. In Mexico, we lived in a ranch with no electricity and no running water. Now I think back and I can't imagine my kids working 10 hours a day, doing hard work and all while in the sun. but somehow my family and I did it. We worked on sugar beets, beans, cherries, corn, and cucumbers. Picking cucumbers is one of the worst jobs ever. The first couple of days on picking cucumbers were the most painful. Your back hurts so bad. I remember my mother would help me by pushing my body down because I couldn't sit in the toilet. But then your body gets so used to it and you just continue working until there's no more picking or school's about to start. And we had to return back home to Texas. Every time I go grocery shopping, I can't help but think of all the people that work so hard so that I can go into a store and shop for my fruits and vegetables. I think of all the little hands that picked all those fruits. Many families have no idea of the work that gets done so that we can have food in our stores and in our tables at home. We owe a lot to our farm workers. Every time I pick out a cucumber at the grocery store, I swear to God, my back hurts. I swear I feel it, and I remember my poor mother and what she had to do when we could not sit in the toilet. Don't get me wrong, I still love cucumbers, and I will continue to eat them the rest of my life. Being a farm worker, you don't get treated like a human being. People see you as being beneath them. I remember working in Montana. I remember a truck driving by and someone called us whores. It was my mother, my two aunts, my sister, and myself. And I was like, whores? I didn't understand. Why would those men call us that? We were just working. We were doing something good, something important, yet farm workers just don't get the respect they deserve. Many times while working the fields, farmers would spray pesticides right there next to us. Airplanes would also fly over us with no consideration for us being there. They just sprayed just right on top of us, all those children working there. They didn't care. Another awful thing that we had to deal with was the bathrooms. Bathrooms were never ever provided. My husband and I flip homes for a living, and the first thing that we do is provide a porta potty on site. But for us working in the field, there was nothing. You're working in the field, so without a bathroom, there's no privacy. Can you imagine how horrible it was being a girl and also being on your period? Just the worst. We would get so excited when we would see some cornfields next to the fields. We would be working on corns grow tall. Even now, when I pass cornfields, I still remember that good feeling of relief we would all get. There was also a farmer in Michigan that I would never, ever forget his name. He was Carl. Don't say the last name. We worked for him for many years. One day, Carl told me to ask my dad how much money my dad would want to purchase me. When I told my dad, he got so upset. I remember him saying, "We are never ever working for him again. The hell does he think he is?" Carl came to the fields the next day, and I just told him, "I'm not for sale." You see, my parents didn't speak English, and I was the oldest, so I was their interpreter. I don't think I really understand at the time. I didn't understand at the time. How could he think I was for sale? Would he have asked his neighbors if he could buy their child? What made him think I was for sale? There was also a farmer in Montana who placed us in a home that was right next to the cows. We thought it was great until we realized we were going to share the house with tons of ticks. They were all over the house. We didn't know about exterminators. We would stick cotton balls in our ears at night so the ticks didn't go inside. That's what the farmer gave us, and we lived like that all summer long. We didn't have a choice. Prior to being a farm worker, my parents, my sister, and myself lived illegally in East Texas and in San Antonio. I was little, and I remember always living in fear. I wasn't quite sure of what, but I remember being scared. My mom was always scared, so I guess we picked up after that. I remember looking through the windows, not sure what to look for, but knew that's what my parents would do. I remember living in a garage with my parents and other adults related to my parents. We all slept on the floor. No mattresses, just on the floor, blankets. One day while my dad was working in Lufkin, immigration picked him up and sent us back to Mexico. It wasn't hard for us to cross the river again because we lived right next to it. That was where we would go take showers. But we came back to the United States, but as resident aliens. That's when we were placed in a school where I didn't speak their language. I don't know how we managed to pass grades because it was hard and had no help at home. There's nobody to help you with your homework. You just had to figure it out on your own. We were never in any trouble. We never even thought of doing any criminal thing. We never did anything illegal. We just worked hard. And when we got back home from working all summer, we went straight back to school. There was no vacation. If I wanted to go to the movies or a dance or I needed some extra money, I would go work on the weekends when there was picking to do. I would get on a bus in my hometown of Eagle Pass with a whole bunch of men. Mostly came from Mexico. They would cross. And the bus would leave around 5 a.m. I remember leaving home to Austin at the age of 18. I wasn't too scared of not making it. I knew how to work hard and I knew I would not starve. Even though my parents were cried because they didn't know what was going to happen to me over here all by myself. My dad would always say, never ever marry a farm worker. They will bring you back. You guys need to study. He'd tell this to his, mostly because he had daughters. Y'all need to study and you need to get an education. Don't ever come back over here. This is not what you want to do with your life. Study so that you never come back. I know he always feels sorry for taking us to work. He would always tell us. My sisters have graduated from St. Edward's. One of them was a valedictorian at the high school. Graduated from UT. We've all done well. I think it's helped us to understand the value of hard work. Not everyone does. My dad says he's very proud of us. My mom passed away, but I know my mom was proud of us too. We are who we are because of them. My parents became U.S. citizens many years ago. They would always ask me, why don't you become a U.S. citizen? My response was always, why do I have to pay? They should give it to me. I've earned it. I've been reporting on my Social Security ever since I can remember. I've never been arrested, don't have any tickets. I worked for the state government all my adult life. And I still have to apply for an application and have to pay. I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand for so long. Like many people, I got stuck on the money. But I think it was so dumb of me to think that way. I am now a U.S. citizen and I can vote. In the winter before COVID-19 pandemic, I was talking to my sisters about wanting to rent a house and take my kids to work somewhere in the field the entire summer. I offered to take their kids as well. They liked the idea and they were like, take them, they're yours. I knew the work would kill my back, but I wanted to show them what it was to work in the fields like we did. I wanted them to appreciate the people that are doing this for us and for our country. I wanted my children to understand, to humble themselves, even if more than likely they would get discriminated against. I wanted them to know what farm workers do and be an advocate for them one day. Then the virus came in and kind of messed up my plans. But I'm still thinking of taking him one of these days. I'm going to rent a house somewhere and I'm going to take my kids and the kids of anybody who wants to send them. I want them to know what it feels like to feed America.
The work is hard. The work is good. The work is needed. Every day we get phone calls asking for more help, and like most low and no cost agencies, we're at capacity. So what do we do? What do we do? I know for me, I have my sights set on hiring another attorney, on hiring another legal assistant to support that attorney, and giving much needed support to our current legal director. Those expenses come to a total of $150,000, and that could seem like a big number. But I know our supporters, and I know our work. It is good, and it is needed. So I think of that as 10 families willing to make a significant gift of $5,000 or more, alongside 10 congregations willing to pledge $10,000 or more. I think it's doable. I think that dream is not far off because of supporters like you and the connections you have in the community that can help us to further our mission of legal services, education, and advocacy, because the work is needed and the work is good. So thank you for your support today and every day. Thank you for being here at our virtual gala at home together. Thank you for listening, for speaking out. Thank you for giving.
you